The story opens with the sound of metal grinding against asphalt and a violent plunge into black water. We see Linda Dan knee-deep in the harbor, her apron still tied around her waist, staring at a silver sedan disappearing beneath the oily surface, while her phone abandoned on the pier beside a canvas work bag lights up with a final text from her manager. Security footage doesn't lie. Clean out your locker. You're done. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. We meet Linda, a woman the city has trained to make herself small. She is black, in her late 20s, with her hair pulled back in a practical bun. Chapter 1. The Cold Water. The harbor doesn't care about heroism. It takes what it wants. Linda's body hits the water like a fist through glass, the cold so sharp it feels like being stabbed in 1,000 places at once. Her lungs seize. Her vision goes white at the edges. But her hands, those calloused waitress hands that have carried 100 trays without dropping a single glass, know how to hold on. She kicks downward through water thick as motor oil, following the pale shape of the sinking sedan. The car is nosing down into the depths, rear bumper still visible in the murky glow of the pier lights above. Through the driver's side window, she can see Song Joe slumped against the steering wheel, unconscious, a ribbon of blood trailing from his temple. The door won't open. The pressure differential is too great. Linda's lungs are already burning, her body screaming for air, but she pulls herself along the car's frame to the passenger side, finds the window cracked from impact, and drives her elbow through the remaining glass. Pain lances up her arm. Blood clouds the water, but she doesn't know if it's his or hers. She squeezes through the window opening, jagged glass tearing at her uniform, and gets her hands under Song Joe's armpits. He's deadweight, 200 pounds of muscle and bone and silk shirt. The seatbelt is jammed. Of course it's jammed. Linda's fingers fumble with the release mechanism, her vision tunneling, black spots blooming like ink stains across her sight. Not like this. Not after everything. She finds the hard edge of the buckle, presses, pulls, and the belt releases with a mechanical click that sounds like a gunshot in the underwater silence. She hauls Song Joe backward through the window, her feet finding purchase against the car's frame, her shoulders straining with a weight that should be impossible to move. Her father's voice echoes in her memory. "You're stronger than you know, baby girl. Stronger than you know." The surface is so far away. A silver ceiling that ripples and bends, impossibly distant. Linda kicks upward with everything she has left, dragging Song Joe with her. His body a leaden anchor she refuses to release. Her lungs are on fire. Her muscles are screaming. The darkness at the edges of her vision is growing, swallowing the light. 10 feet. 5 feet. Her hand breaks the surface first, fingers clawing at air. And then her face emerges, and she gasps, a sound like tearing fabric, and pulls Song Joe's head above water, just as her strength gives out completely. They drift toward the pilings beneath the pier, Linda's arms locked around Song Joe's chest, and a lifeguard, Carrie, she learned at the community pool when she was 16. The current wants to pull them back out into the harbor, but she kicks sideways, navigating by instinct toward the shadows, where the pier meets the water. There's an alcove there, a forgotten space between concrete and rotting wood where homeless people sometimes sleep. She drags Song Joe onto a narrow ledge of wet stone, rolls him onto his side, and collapses beside him, her body shaking so hard her teeth chatter. Above them, she can hear voices, sharp, urgent, speaking in a language she doesn't understand. Footsteps on the pier, the distinctive click of weapons being readied. Linda presses her hand over Song Joe's mouth, her own breath coming in ragged gasps, and waits in the darkness as the hunters search for their prey. Chapter 2. The Unemployment Line. Linda returns to her apartment at 3 in the morning to find her entire life sitting on the curb. Her landlord, a man named Sal who owns half the deteriorating buildings in this neighborhood, is leaning against the building's entrance, arms crossed, face set in an expression that might be pity or might be satisfaction. It's hard to tell in the sodium vapor light of the street lamp. "Rent's 3 months overdue, Linda," he says, not unkindly. "I gave you time. More time than I should have." Her possessions are packed in trash bags and cardboard boxes. The photograph of her father in his army uniform, her collection of paperback novels purchased from thrift stores, the winter coat she saved 6 months to buy. Everything that proves she existed in this space, now sitting on filthy concrete, like garbage waiting for collection. Linda is still wearing her soaked uniform. Her shoes, the ones she kicked off before diving into the harbor, are gone, lost to the water. Her feet are bare and bleeding from the walk back, leaving rust-colored prints on the sidewalk. She smells like motor oil and river rot. Her hair, freed from its bun, hangs in dark ropes around her face. "I had a job," she says, her voice hoarse from swallowing harbor water. "I had. Had isn't the same as have," Sal interrupts. "Look, you're a good kid. Quiet. Never cause problems. But I got bills too, you understand? I can't." "I understand," Linda says, because she does. Understanding is what people like her do best. They understand when they're being fired, when they're being evicted, when they're being told that their suffering is unfortunate but necessary for someone else's bottom line. She picks up the box containing her father's photograph and a few changes of clothes. The rest can stay. The books, the dishes, the second-hand lamp, they're just weight. Anchors that will drag her down faster. "Where you gonna go?" Sal asks, and there's genuine concern in his voice now, which somehow makes it worse. "I'll figure it out," Linda says, already walking away. She spends the rest of the night on a bench in Riverside Park, the box clutched against her chest, watching the harbor where she saved Song Joe's life. The water is calm now, giving no indication of the violence it witnessed hours before. In the growing dawn light, she can see the city waking up, delivery trucks making their rounds, early commuters shuffling toward bus stops, the world continuing as if nothing has changed. But everything has changed. Linda has crossed a line she didn't know existed, from invisible to visible, from safe to exposed. She helped someone, and the universe, true to form, punished her for it. Her phone, miraculously still functional despite its brief submersion, buzzes with a text from her father's hospice. Payment declined. Please update billing information, or we will need to discuss alternative arrangements. Linda deletes the message. Then she deletes her manager's termination text. Then she deletes everything, clearing her phone like clearing a slate, erasing the evidence of a life that no longer exists. When the park maintenance crew arrives at 6 a.m. and tells her she needs to move along, she doesn't argue. People like her never do. Chapter 3. The Black SUVs. The black SUVs find her at noon, outside the public library, where she's been using the bathroom to wash the river smell from her skin with paper towels and hand soap. There are 3 of them, Escalades with tinted windows and chrome so polished it reflects the sun like mirrors. They pull up to the curb in perfect formation, and men emerge wearing suits that cost more than Linda earned in 6 months at the bistro. They move with the kind of precision that speaks to military training or something darker. Linda's first instinct is to run. Her second instinct is to accept whatever's coming, because she's too tired to fight and too empty to care. She stands on the library steps, clutching her cardboard box, and watches them approach. The lead man is tall, built like a linebacker, with a scar that runs from his temple to his jaw. He stops 3 feet away and executes a bow so formal it looks like something from another century. "Miss Dan," he says, his accent thick and unfamiliar. "Mr. Song requests your presence." "I don't know any Mr. Song." Linda lies, because lying is what you do when dangerous men know your name. "He knows you," the man says. "You save his brother's life. He wishes to express his gratitude." The word brother lands like stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. Song Joe had a brother. Song Joe, the confused man she fed scraps to, the drowning man she pulled from a sinking car, has a brother powerful enough to command a fleet of SUVs and soldiers in tailored suits. "I don't want gratitude," Linda says. "I want to be left alone." The man's expression doesn't change. Mr. Song does not make requests lightly. "Please, Miss Dan, we are not here to harm you. We are here to honor you." There's something in his voice, a weight, a gravity, that tells Linda she doesn't actually have a choice. These men will put her in the SUV, whether she walks willingly or not. The only question is how much dignity she'll retain in the process. She descends the library steps, her bare feet silent on stone, and allows herself to be ushered into the middle vehicle. The interior smells like leather and cigarette smoke. The seats are heated. Classical music plays softly from hidden speakers. It's the nicest place Linda has sat in months, maybe years, and the contrast between this comfort and her cardboard box of possessions makes her want to laugh or cry or both. They drive for 20 minutes, leaving the decaying waterfront behind and climbing into the hills where the city's old money lives behind gates and hedges. The SUVs pass through a checkpoint manned by more suited guards, then up a private drive lined with cherry trees just beginning to bloom. The mansion at the end of the drive doesn't look like a mansion. It looks like a fortress disguised as a house. All sharp angles and dark glass and security cameras that track their approach like predatory eyes. The SUVs pull into a circular drive where a fountain burbles peacefully, water arcing from the mouth of a bronze dragon. "This way, please," the scarred man says, opening her door. Linda steps out into a world that shouldn't exist on the same planet as her eviction notice. The air smells like jasmine and wealth. The silence is the kind that only money can buy. No traffic noise, no sirens, no humanity pressing in from all sides. She follows the men through double doors of carved mahogany into an entrance hall with marble floors and a chandelier that catches the light and throws rainbows across white walls. Her feet leave wet prints on the pristine stone. She's still wearing her torn, stained uniform. She still smells like the harbor. And at the top of a curved staircase, watching her with an expression she can't read, stands a man who can only be Song Joe's brother. Chapter 4, A Debt of Honor. Kenji Song is not what Linda expected. He's younger than she imagined, perhaps 35, with the same sharp cheekbones as his brother but colder eyes. He wears a charcoal suit that fits like it was painted on, his hair cut with geometric precision, his hands clasped loosely at his waist. He descends the staircase with the measured pace of someone who has never hurried for anything in his life. "Miss Dan," he says, his English perfect and accentless. "Thank you for coming." "I don't think I had much choice," Linda says, too exhausted for diplomacy. A flicker of something, amusement? Respect crosses Kenji's face. You are correct. But I appreciate your honesty nonetheless. Please come. My brother wishes to see you. He leads her through corridors hung with artwork that probably belongs in museums, past rooms filled with furniture that looks unused and expensive, to a suite of rooms overlooking the garden. Song Jo is sitting in a leather chair by the window, his head bandaged, his torn silk shirt replaced with pajamas that probably cost more than Linda's entire wardrobe ever did. When he sees her, his face transforms. You, he says, struggling to stand. The woman who... Sit down, Linda says automatically, her waitress instincts kicking in. You shouldn't be moving yet. Song Jo laughs, a sound of pure relief, and sinks back into the chair. I told you, brother. I told you she was the one who saved me. Kenji studies Linda with an intensity that makes her skin prickle. My brother remembers very little of the past week. He was drugged, disoriented, left to die on the streets like garbage. But he remembers you. The woman who gave him food when he was starving. The woman who pulled him from the water when he was drowning. Anyone would have done the same, Linda says, though she knows this isn't true. No one did do the same. Hundreds of people walked past Song Jo. Only she stopped. No, Kenji says flatly. Anyone would not have. You lost your job feeding my brother. You lost your home saving his life. And now, he gestures, and the scarred man from before appears, carrying a brushed metal briefcase. Now I will repay that debt. The case opens to reveal stacks of cash, neatly banded, more money than Linda has seen in her entire life. $1 million, Kenji says. Tax-free, untraceable, enough to solve every problem you mentioned in your sleep last night. Linda stares at the money. She thinks about her father's hospice bills, about never worrying where her next meal will come from, about having a home with heat and running water and doors that lock. The cash smells like possibility. No, she hears herself say. The room goes silent. Even Song Jo looks surprised. No, Kenji repeats, his tone suggesting that people don't refuse him. I don't want your money, Linda says, the words coming from somewhere deep and desperate. Money disappears. Money gets stolen or spent or lost. I've watched that happen my whole life. She meets Kenji's eyes, refuses to look away. I want a job, a real job, one where I'm treated with respect, where I'm not invisible, where my word means something. Kenji stares at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiles, a real smile, not the polite mask he's been wearing. You are either very brave or very foolish, Miss Dan. Probably both, Linda admits. Very well, Kenji says, closing the briefcase. You want to work? You will work. You will manage the household staff. You will oversee the kitchens, the grounds, the security schedules. You will have an apartment in the East Wing, a salary of $200,000 per year, and full medical benefits, including care for your father. He pauses. And you will have my protection, which in this city is worth more than any amount of cash. Linda's knees go weak. I don't know how to do any of that. You know how to see what needs doing and do it without being asked, Kenji says. You know how to make decisions under pressure. You know how to save lives when it would be easier to look away. His expression hardens. These are skills I can teach you to apply. The rest, the compassion, the courage, these cannot be taught. Either you have them or you do not. He extends his hand. Linda, still dazed, shakes it. His grip is firm, his palm dry, his touch as cool and calculated as everything else about him. "Welcome to the family, Miss Dan," Kenji's song says. "I hope you survive it." Chapter 5. The Assassin's Shadow. Linda has been living in the mansion for 3 weeks when the assassins come. She's learned the rhythms of the house, the way Kenji takes his coffee, black, no sugar, precisely 6 a.m., the preferred schedule for cleaning the main hall, never before 9, when Kenji finishes his morning calls to associates in Asia. The hierarchies among the staff. Old Mrs. Chun runs the kitchen with an iron fist, while Marcus, the head of security, defers to no one except Kenji himself. She's learned that Song Jo is sweet but damaged, prone to nightmares that wake the entire East Wing, that he's slowly remembering what happened to him but refuses to speak about it to anyone except his brother. She's learned that the mansion has panic rooms, escape routes, and enough weapons hidden throughout its walls to outfit a small army. What she hasn't learned is how to stop feeling like an imposter. She's in the pantry, a room the size of her old apartment, lined with enough food to feed a small village, doing inventory when she hears the first gunshot. It's distinct and unmistakable, cutting through the mansion's carefully maintained silence like scissors through silk. Linda's body reacts before her mind catches up. She drops the clipboard, runs toward the sound, and finds Song Jo in the hallway outside his room, face pale, his bodyguard bleeding on the carpet. More gunshots, closer now, and the sound of Marcus shouting orders into his radio. "With me," Linda says, grabbing Song Jo's arm. "Now." "What? Now?" She pulls him back toward the pantry, her waitress instincts kicking in. The ability to navigate crowded spaces, to anticipate obstacles, to move efficiently through chaos. Behind them, she can hear footsteps, voices speaking in clipped commands, the distinctive sound of more gunfire. The pantry has something most people wouldn't notice, a heavy steel door at the back, disguised as a wine storage unit. Marcus showed it to her during her first security briefing, explained it was a panic room with reinforced walls, independent ventilation, and supplies to last a week. Linda shoves Song Jo inside, follows him in, and seals the door just as she hears someone enter the pantry behind them. The lock engages with a heavy thunk. The lights inside the panic room activate automatically, revealing a small space with canned goods, water, a first aid kit, and a phone that connects directly to external security. Song Jo is shaking. "They found me again. The people who—" "Stop," Linda says, her voice steadier than she feels. She picks up the phone, dials Marcus's direct line. "We're secure in pantry-safe room. Song Jo is with me. Status." Marcus's voice comes through crackly but relieved. "4 hostiles, professional team. We've neutralized 3. The 4th is contained in the East Corridor. Mr. Song is handling it personally." A pause. "You did good, Linda. Real good. Stay put until I give the all-clear." Linda hangs up and slides down to sit on the cold floor. Song Jo sits beside her, his breathing gradually slowing. They stay like that for 30 minutes, listening to muffled sounds from beyond the steel door, until Marcus's voice comes through the intercom. "Clear. You can come out." When they emerge, Kenji is standing in the pantry, his suit jacket discarded, his white shirt spattered with what Linda assumes is blood, though his expression suggests it's not his own. He looks at Song Jo first, confirming his brother is unharmed, then turned his attention to Linda. "You save his life," Kenji says. "Again, I put him in a locked room. Linda responds. Anyone could have. Anyone could have frozen. Kenji interrupts. Anyone could have panicked. Anyone could have run to save themselves. He steps closer, his eyes searching hers. But you didn't. You acted. You protected what mattered. Something shifts in the air between them. Recognition. A recalibration of where Linda stands in the mansion's carefully constructed hierarchy. Tomorrow, Kenji says, your real training begins. Chapter 6. Training the Waitress. Kenji's song teaches Linda the language of power. He starts with simple concepts. How to read a room. How to identify who holds real authority versus who merely performs it. How to listen to what people don't say. They sit in his office, a study lined with books in multiple languages, and he walks her through the structure of his organization. People think I'm a criminal, Kenji says, his tone matter-of-fact. They're not entirely wrong. My family built our fortune through gambling, loan operations, protection services. But we also built schools, funded hospitals, kept neighborhoods safe when the police wouldn't. He pauses. The question, Miss Dan, is not whether power exists. The question is who wields it, and to what end. Linda thinks about the bistro where she worked, where wealthy men made deals that affected thousands of lives while she refilled their water glasses. She thinks about her landlord, about her manager, about every person who ever had power over her survival and used it carelessly. I understand, she says. Do you? Kenji asks. Because understanding and accepting are different things. I am teaching you to swim in dangerous waters. Some people who swim here drown. Over the following weeks, Linda becomes Kenji's shadow. She sits in on meetings where men with hard faces discuss territory disputes and business opportunities that exist in legal gray zones. She learns names, alliances, grudges that stretch back generations. She learns that Kenji's organization is one of 3 major powers in the city, and that the Shadow Syndicate, the group that tried to kill Song-jo, has been growing more aggressive, more willing to break the old agreements that kept the peace. She learns to shoot, though she's terrible at it. She learns basic self-defense from Marcus, who respects her enough now to not pull his punches during training. She learns how to manage the household budget, how to negotiate with suppliers, how to spot inconsistencies in expense reports that might indicate theft or betrayal. But mostly, she learns from watching Kenji himself. The way he commands loyalty not through fear, but through competence and fairness. The way he remembers every person's name, every favor owed, every slight committed. The way he can be ruthless when necessary but never cruel, efficient but never wasteful. You're making me into something, Linda says one evening, after a particularly brutal training session where Marcus had her memorize the faces and affiliations of over 50 key players in the city's underworld. No, Kenji corrects. I'm revealing what you already are. The woman who dove into the harbor wasn't a waitress. She was a warrior who didn't know she was at war. 6 months pass. Linda's father receives the best care available, his condition stabilizing under the attention of specialists Kenji provides. Linda moves through the mansion with confidence now, her decisions respected by staff who initially viewed her with suspicion. She dresses differently. No more stained uniforms, but tailored clothes that fit her properly, that announce her position without requiring explanation. Song-jo recovers, though the nightmares persist. He tells her in quiet moments fragments of what happened. Being drugged at a meeting with the consigliere, Kenji's most trusted advisor, and waking up on the street, his memory Swiss cheese, his identity stripped away. He doesn't remember who did it. His mind has blocked that part out. A kindness or a curse. Linda files this information away, adds it to the mental map she's been building of the organization's weak points and vulnerabilities. Because she's learned one thing above all else in her time with Kenji Song. In a world built on loyalty, betrayal is the deadliest weapon. Chapter 7. The Diner's Revenge. The day Linda returns to Marchand's bistro, she arrives in a Blacktown car with Marcus driving and 2 security personnel in a follow vehicle. The bistro looks smaller than she remembers, shabbier, like a costume that fit perfectly once, but now hangs loose and obvious. Through the window, she can see her former manager, Gerald, a man whose cruelty came from smallness rather than strength, berating a young waitress about the way she's folding napkins. Linda steps out of the car wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than Gerald makes in a month. Her hair is styled, her nails manicured, her posture reflecting the confidence that comes from knowing dangerous men have your back. She walks through the front door, and the restaurant's ambient noise falters, conversations dying mid-sentence. Gerald looks up from his napkin lecture, and his face goes through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, and finally fear. "Linda," he manages. "What are you?" "You fired me," Linda says, her voice carrying through the quiet space, "for feeding a hungry man. Do you remember?" Gerald's mouth opens and closes. Several diners are watching now, sensing drama. The young waitress, who can't be more than 19, watches with wide eyes. "You were stealing food," Gerald says, trying to recover his authority. "I had every right to." "You had the right," Linda agrees. "Just like you have the right to pay your staff minimum wage while the owners charge $40 for a steak. Just like you have the right to dock pay when someone takes a sick day, or to schedule people for 39 hours so you don't have to provide benefits." She steps closer. "Rights and righteousness aren't the same thing, Gerald. I learned that the hard way." "What do you want?" Gerald asks, and there's a tremor in his voice now. Linda pulls an envelope from her jacket pocket, places it on the nearest table. "I want you to open this." Gerald hesitates, then opens the envelope with shaking hands. Inside is a document, several pages long, printed on legal letterhead. His face goes white as he reads. What is this?" "That," Linda says, "is a purchase agreement. As of this morning, I own this building and the 3 buildings on either side of it. Your lease has been terminated, effective in 30 days. She pauses. "I'm turning this entire block into something better. A training facility for hospitality workers, with fair wages, benefits, and actual respect. People who've been treated the way you treated me will be given opportunities you never offered." She turns to the young waitress, who's still clutching her imperfectly folded napkin. "What's your name?" "Melissa," the girl whispers. "Melissa, how would you like to be my first hire? $15 an hour to start, health insurance, and I promise you'll never be screamed at about napkins again." Melissa nods so hard her ponytail bounces. Linda looks back at Gerald, who seems to have aged a decade in the past 5 minutes. "You taught me something important, Gerald. You taught me that invisible people see everything. Every corner you cut, every cruelty you inflicted, every time you made someone feel worthless, we saw it all. We just couldn't do anything about it." She heads toward the door, Marcus materializing at her side. "Until now," she adds, and walks out into the afternoon sun, leaving Gerald standing in the ruins of his small empire. In the car, Marcus glances at her in the rearview mirror. Feel good? Linda considers this. No, she says honestly, but it felt necessary. Chapter 8. The Betrayal. Linda finds the proof by accident. She's reviewing security footage from the night of the attack. Kenji asked her to look for patterns, anything that might indicate how the assassins knew the mansion's blind spots, when she notices something odd. In the timestamps leading up to the assault, there's a gap. 15 minutes where the East Corridor cameras went dark, then came back online with no explanation. She mentions this to Marcus, who frowns and pulls up the security logs. The system shows no malfunction, no scheduled maintenance. The cameras simply stopped. That's not possible, Marcus says. The system has redundancies. The only way to disable it is. From inside, Linda finishes. Someone with administrator access. They look at each other. There are only 4 people with administrator access to the security system. Marcus, Kenji, Song-jo, and the consigliere, a man named Victor Chun who's been with the Song family for 20 years. Linda's mind races back to what Song-jo told her. He was drugged at a meeting with the consigliere. The consigliere who has keys to everything, access to everyone, trust that was built over decades. We need to tell Kenji, Marcus says. Not yet, Linda says, her voice sharp. If we're wrong, we destroy an innocent man's reputation. If we're right, and Victor realizes we're onto him, he'll run or do something desperate. She thinks, her waitress brain assembling pieces. We need proof. Real proof. Over the next week, Linda becomes a spy in her own home. She watches Victor, catalogs his movements, notes who he meets with and when. She discovers that he leaves the mansion every Tuesday evening, supposedly to visit his sister in the suburbs. She follows him once, Marcus reluctantly providing a covert tale, and watches as he enters not a residential home, but a warehouse in the industrial district. Through windows high on the warehouse wall, Linda photographs Victor meeting with men she recognizes from her training, known associates of the Shadow Syndicate. Money changes hands. Documents are exchanged. And in one damning shot, Victor points to a map of the mansion spread across a table, his finger tracing what can only be the route the assassins took. When Linda shows Kenji the evidence, his face becomes a mask. He studies each photograph in silence, his jaw working, his hands perfectly still. Song-jo is there too, and when he sees the consigliere's face, his own face crumbles. He's the one, Song-jo whispers. He's the one who drugged me. I remember now. The tea he offered me, the way he smiled. His voice breaks. Kenji stands, walks to the window overlooking the garden. For a long moment, he says nothing. Then, how did you know to look? I didn't, Linda admits. I just saw something that didn't fit. Something invisible to everyone else, because they trusted what they were supposed to trust. The waitress sees what the masters miss, Kenji says, almost to himself. He turns back to face them. Victor has been like an uncle to us. He was at my father's side when he built this organization. His voice hardens. He will answer for this betrayal. Publicly. The blood gala, Marcus says quietly. Kenji nods. The blood gala. Chapter 9. The blood gala. The blood gala is not a celebration. It's a reckoning. Once a year, the city's 3 major powers meet in neutral territory to resolve disputes, negotiate boundaries, and witness justice for crimes against the code that keeps their world functioning. It's held in the Crimson Hall, an old theater that once hosted operas and now hosts something far more dramatic. Linda attends wearing a black dress that Kenji selected personally. Her role tonight, that of witness and participant both. She sits in the song family section, surrounded by soldiers and advisors, while the hall fills with dangerous people pretending to be civilized. The Shadow Syndicate is there, led by a woman named Jade Winters, who's rumored to have killed her own father to take control. The Third Power, Caucus, a loose confederation of independent operators, sends representatives wearing the red ribbons that mark them as neutral observers. Victorchen arrives in custody, his hands bound, his face pale but composed. He knows what's coming. Everyone in the room knows what's coming. Kenji stands at the central podium, his voice carrying through the theater without need for amplification. Victorchen served my family for 20 years. We trusted him with our secrets, our safety, our lives. He pauses. That trust was betrayed. He sold information to the Shadow Syndicate, information that was used to attempt the assassination of my brother. The evidence is incontrovertible. He gestures, and images flash on screens around the hall. The photographs Linda took, security footage, bank records showing payments from Shadow Syndicate accounts to Victor's offshore holdings. The proof is overwhelming. Jade Winter stands, her expression unreadable. The Shadow Syndicate acknowledges that Victor Chun provided information. We deny any assassination attempt. The information was used for legitimate business intelligence only. Legitimate business, Kenji repeats, his tone suggesting exactly what he thinks of this claim. And yet assassins entered my home using routes and timing that only someone with intimate knowledge could provide. Perhaps your security is simply inadequate, Jade says, and several people in her section laugh. Linda stands before she realizes she's moving. The room goes quiet. She's not supposed to speak. She has no official position, no standing in this world of old powers and older grudges. But Kenji doesn't stop her. I was a waitress, Linda says, her voice clear and strong. For years, I served people like you. I was invisible to you, beneath notice. She looks at Jade Winters. That invisibility taught me to see things others miss. Like how Victor disabled security cameras 15 minutes before your team arrived. Like how the assassins knew exactly which panic room Songjo would use, except we went to a different one. One Victor didn't know existed because I'd only recently been told about it. She walks toward the center of the room, toward the space between Kenji and Jade. You think because I was poor, because I served food and cleaned tables, that I'm not smart enough to understand what happened here. But I understand perfectly. You wanted to kill Song Jo to start a war. Victor was your tool. And now, she looks at Victor, who won't meet her eyes. Now he gets to answer for putting his greed above loyalty. The room erupts in argument. Representatives from all three powers shout over each other. But Kenji raises his hand, and silence falls. The code is clear, he says. Betrayal is answered with blood. But, he looks at Linda, something like respect in his eyes. I will offer mercy. Victor Chun, you can accept exile. Leave this city, never return, and live out your days in anonymity. Or you can face traditional justice. Choose. Victor finally speaks, his voice rough. I choose exile. I'm sorry, Kenji. Songjo. Your apology means nothing, Songjo says, standing. But your departure means you won't hurt anyone else I love. Go. Disappear. If you ever return, there will be no mercy. Victor is escorted out. The gala continues with other business, but Linda knows the real message has been sent. The Song family is not weak, and the woman who saved Song Joe is not to be underestimated. As they leave the Crimson Hall hours later, Kenji walks beside Linda. "You changed the narrative tonight," he says. Jade expected a bloodbath. Instead, she got a demonstration of strength through restraint, and a reminder that we see everything, even through eyes she didn't know were watching. "I was just telling the truth," Linda says. "In our world," Kenji replies, "truth is the most dangerous weapon of all." Chapter 10. The New Queen of the City. 6 months after the Blood Gala, the city begins to change in ways that make headlines, but confuse everyone trying to understand them. Crime rates drop in neighborhoods that have been war zones for decades, not because of increased police presence, but because the Song organization, now with Linda as its chief operating officer, redirects protection money into community programs. Basketball courts where kids sold drugs are renovated and staffed with coaches. Corner stores that used to be fronts for loan sharking become legitimate businesses, with small business loans at reasonable rates. The old bistro building and its neighbors are now the Riverside Hospitality Institute, offering free training to anyone who wants to enter the service industry. Linda teaches classes there twice a week, sharing everything she learned about reading people, managing chaos, and finding dignity in work that others dismiss. The Shadow Syndicate tries to fill the vacuum, but they're not equipped for what Linda's doing. You can't fight community investment with violence. You can't compete with fair wages and real opportunity by offering fear and exploitation. Jade Winters makes 2 more attempts to destabilize Song territory, but each time, the community itself pushes back because they have something worth protecting now. The mayor calls it a miracle. The police commissioner doesn't know what to call it. The newspapers run think pieces trying to understand how a former waitress became the most powerful woman in a city that's notoriously resistant to change. Kenji announces at a press conference, legitimate press, not the coded messages of the underworld, that the Song family is transitioning to fully legal operations. He's funding a new hospital in the East District, renovating 3 failing schools, and investing in affordable housing projects. Standing beside him, Linda takes questions from reporters who can't quite believe what they're seeing. "How did you go from serving food to running this organization?" one reporter asks. Linda thinks about the night she fed Song Joe scraps through a back door. She thinks about diving into black water to save a stranger. She thinks about every moment she was invisible, overlooked, dismissed as irrelevant to the important business of powerful men. "I didn't go from serving food to running an organization," she says. "I went from serving without power to serving with it. The work hasn't changed. I'm still trying to help people survive in a city that doesn't make survival easy. I just have better tools now." That night, back at the mansion, Kenji and Song Joe host a private dinner in her honor. The dining room is full of people who matter, Marcus and Mrs. Chun, the household staff who've become family, advisors and allies who've bought into this strange new vision of what power can build instead of destroy. Song Joe stands, raising his glass. "To Linda Dan, who saved my life twice. Once from water, once from the cynicism that says people can't change and cities can't heal." "To Linda," the room echoes. Linda stands, her own glass raised, looking at faces that used to be strangers and are now the closest thing she has to family. "I was taught that invisible people don't matter. That service is servitude. That power is something other people have, and you just have to survive their use of it." She pauses. But I learned something else. I learned that being invisible means you see everything. That service is how you understand what people need. And that power, real power, comes from using what you see and understand to make the world stop eating its children. She looks at Kenji, who's watching her with an expression she's learned to read as pride. Thank you for teaching me how to swim in dangerous waters. Now let's drain the ocean. Outside, the city spreads out beneath the mansion like a blanket of lights. Somewhere in those lights, someone is struggling the way Linda struggled. Someone is invisible the way she was invisible. Someone is choosing between their safety and their compassion. But now, maybe, hopefully, when they choose compassion, the world won't punish them for it. The city is still speechless, trying to understand what Linda Dan represents. But Linda knows the answer. She represents what happens when the people society overlooks finally get the resources to fix what society broke. She represents the revolution that comes not with violence, but with visibility. She represents the moment when the waitress stops serving and starts leading, and the powerful learn that they were never the only ones who knew how the world worked. They were just the only ones who could afford to do something about it. Until now. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you, just to know how far our story is going.